So, could the BRICS 2025 summit be remembered as the event that, truly shifted the balance of global power?
Or maybe, as one of our key sources puts it quite provocatively, can BRICS actually change the world? It's a huge question.
It really is. I mean, for decades, the world's most powerful nations have pretty much controlled global politics, global economics.
That's been the standard model, yes.
But what's striking, looking at the sources for this deep dive, is this really dramatic claim that 45% of humanity is right now actively declaring independence from that whole system.
Yeah, independence, that's a strong word.
It is. And the sources insist this isn't theory, it's not just talk. The foundational pieces of the shift are apparently being laid, well, right now, as we speak.
And that's really what we want to dig into today, isn't it? Understanding what that Declaration of Independence actually looks like in practice.
Exactly.
Because in July 2025, something genuinely significant seems to have happened in Rio de Janeiro. The BRICS summit wasn't just another diplomatic meeting, was it?
Not according to the participants, no.
Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, he put it very succinctly. He called it a historic turning point in the unfinished struggle for post-colonial justice. Powerful stuff.
It is. And, despite some, let's say, initial Western media takes pushing this idea of a weak summit because some leaders weren't there.
Right, the attendance thing.
Yeah, but the final outcome, according to our sources, actually exceeded all expectations.
Which suggests the focus was elsewhere. It underscored a pretty clear message from the BRICS nations themselves. They don't feel the need to present every single leader just to satisfy the expectations of traditional powers.
The old daddy structure, as the source puts it rather bluntly.
Exactly. They needed results, tangible outcomes.
And the results are pretty robustly documented, aren't they? Every fact, every detail we're about to share with you comes straight from the groundbreaking document itself, the Rio de Janeiro Declaration.
That's right. Officially titled, Strengthening Global South Cooperation for a More Inclusive and Sustainable Governance.
And for anyone listening who wants to go even deeper, we've linked the full document.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Here's what feels like a crucial reality, one maybe most people don't fully grasp yet. BRICS isn't just, complaining about the existing world order anymore.
Mm-hmm. The tone has shifted.
Definitely. They seem to be actively executing their own vision. Like PM Anwar said, very plainly, we cannot continue complaining but not executing.
It signals an end to a certain kind of waiting game.
Right. The era of waiting for permission from Washington or Brussels, it seems like that might be over.
So the goal for us today, for this deep dive, is that by the end, you'll have a much clearer understanding of exactly how BRICS plans, or at least intends, to reshape global power.
We'll explore the concrete strategies laid out in their declaration.
Strategies that could fundamentally change how the world operates, and why this summit might truly mark a historic pivot point.
Okay, let's start with what one source called their most audacious demand. Prime Minister Modi apparently dropped a significant point at the summit.
No, it was that he stated that 2/3 of humanity has been denied adequate representation in the global institutions formed way back in the 20th century.
Wow, 2/3. That's a stark figure. We're talking UN Security Council, IMF, World Bank.
Exactly. Institutions largely shaped after World War II. And Modi used this really striking analogy. He compared these outdated systems without the global south properly represented to a mobile phone with a SIM card but no network.
Huh. A SIM but no network. That does paint a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Highlights that core frustration of feeling disconnected, powerless maybe.
Precisely. But, okay, what are the concrete proposals here? Are they just demanding a seat at the existing table, or is it more radical? Are they building something new?
Well, that's a great question, because what's really striking is that it seems to be both. They aren't just demanding reform. They are actively building alternatives alongside those demands.
Okay, like what?
Well, take the UN. At this summit, China and Russia, both permanent Security Council members, remember, explicitly backed Brazil and India for bigger UN roles.
Including Security Council seats.
Including Security Council seats, yes. That position is clearly stated in the official declaration. The aim seems pretty clear. To balance global decision-making power more effectively.
And does it stop at the UN?
No, it extends beyond that. BRICS pushed hard for what they called real IMF reforms on economic governance. They actually agreed to a quota increase under the 16th General Review of Quotas.
Which means basically more say no and more financial clout within the IMF for these nations?
Essentially, yes. more financial contribution capacity, more voting power reflecting their economic weight, but they attached a crucial condition.
Which was?
That developing nations must not be left behind. The goal isn't just tweaking the edges, it's a whole new formula reflecting today's economic realities, significantly boosting the shares of emerging markets and developing economies.
So not just crumbs anymore.
Exactly. It's a demand for a fundamental re-architecture of financial governance, where their economic weight translates into, well, decisive influence.
And there was a rationale offered for why this is necessary now.
Yes. President Putin apparently explained it by saying the old model of liberal globalization is becoming obsolete simply because the center of business activity is rapidly shifting toward emerging markets.
Their economies are catching up to the G7.
Rapidly catching up, yes. So the governance needs to catch up too.
That's a significant push for reform within the old structures. But, I mean, how realistic is it to expect the existing powers in the IMF to just, hand over that much control?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Resistance is almost certain.
Does the declaration hint at how they plan to overcome that? Because, as you said, they're not just waiting for permission.
Well, it doesn't lay out a specific negotiation tactic for that, but it points strongly towards their plan B, or maybe it's plan A now, which is the proactive creation of new economic and financial architecture.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
Right, the New Development Bank, the NDB.
Exactly. It's apparently entered its second golden decade, actively expanding membership under President Dilma Rousseff. And this isn't just, another development bank.
No, it's positioned quite explicitly as a direct challenge to the World Bank's long-standing monopoly on development financing.
Offering a non-Western alternative, funding growth without, perhaps, the same old strings attached.
That seems to be the core idea. The NDB represents a concrete alternative being actively built and expanded. And it's not just the NDB. Trade was another major focus area.
How so?
BRICS reaffirmed its united support for WTO as the bedrock of fair global commerce. They even welcomed Ethiopia and Iran's bids to join the WTO.
So they support the existing trade body.
Yes, but, and this is important, the bloc also voiced really serious concerns about unilateral tariff measures.
Things like carbon border taxes or other unilateral actions.
Precisely. Stating these distort trade and break WTO rules. They advocate for a truly rules-based, open, fair, multilateral system, but one that includes special treatment for developing members. They're pushing back against what they see as protectionist tendencies disguised as other things.
Okay, fairness in trade. And what about the financial side, beyond the NDB? You mentioned alternatives.
Yes. And this is potentially groundbreaking. They're not just talking about the problems with a dollar-centric system. They're actually building something new to, well, move beyond it, or at least offer an alternative path.
Like what specifically?
We're talking about the creation of a faster, cheaper, and safer payment system. There's a BRICS payment task force that's already written a report. Finance ministers, central bank governors, they're actively collaborating on this.
And is this just theoretical, or is it happening?
We're seeing real-world examples emerge. Take Malaysia. They're currently working on ways to trade directly with Indonesia, Thailand, and China, using their own local currencies.
Bypassing the dollar for regional trade.
Exactly. Now, PM Anwar himself acknowledged it's a long road. This isn't flicking a switch. But the foundations for this kind of independent financial infrastructure are being laid right now.
And it goes beyond just payments, right? I saw mentions of the CRA.
That's right, the contingent reserve arrangement. You can think of it as BRICS' own emergency financial safety net.
Like their own mini IMF.
Sort of, yes. Designed to reduce reliance on traditional global lenders in a crisis. And that's getting a significant upgrade, too. They're adding new currencies to it, improving the safety rules.
Making it more robust.
Exactly. A technical team has agreed on a new treaty to make the system work better, and significantly, new BRICS members are apparently eager to join this CRA program as well.
So it's expanding. And there was something about investment tools.
Yes, a key takeaway here is that BRICS intends to offer new guarantee tools. This seems aimed directly at challenging the dominance of Western banks over global investment flows by providing alternative mechanisms for securing investments. And Russia, specifically, proposed something called a new investment platform.
In partnership with the NDB.
Yes, designed explicitly to fund development free from external pressure. Again, reinforcing this drive for financial autonomy, for alternatives.
It's a multi-pronged approach, then. Payments, reserves, investment guarantees. And it doesn't stop there, does it? They're even looking at food.
They are. They're launching something called the BRICS Grain Exchange.
A grain exchange. Why is that significant?
Well, think about it. BRICS countries collectively grow a huge portion of the world's staple foods. Wheat, rice, corn.
Right. They don't just feed themselves.
They feed a large part of the world. So creating their own exchange could be a total game changer for how global food is traded, priced, and secured. It gives them considerable leverage in global food security discussions.
Wow. Okay, so that ability to feed the world definitely grants them leverage. But it's not just economic leverage they're building, is it? It extends into how they approach global diplomacy.
Absolutely. Amid all these rising international tensions, the summit seemed to make it quite clear that BRICS is choosing, or at least advocating for, dialogue over division.
But are they just calling for talks, or are they taking actual positions?
Oh, they're taking positions, some remarkably bold stances on critical global issues. And this raises that key question. What's different about their approach to these complex conflicts?
How does it differ?
Well, these seem willing to take positions that directly, sometimes sharply, challenge established Western views.
Examples.
Okay, take Iran. They unequivocally condemned the military strikes against Iran that happened since June 13, 2025, called them clear violations of international law and the UN Charter. Very direct language.
What else?
Palestine. Their position is equally clear, laid out point by point. Gaza and the West Bank must unite under Palestinian rule. They demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from all occupied areas.
Strong demands.
Very. Plus, support for Palestine's full UN membership and reaffirming the two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. It's a comprehensive stance.
What about other regions? Syria, Ukraine?
On Syria, they expressed strong support for the country's sovereignty and specifically welcomed the lifting of sanctions. For Ukraine, they recalled their existing national positions stated in UN forums, sort of acknowledging diversity within the group on that issue, but still putting it on the agenda.
And this links back to their general stance on sanctions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This isn't just diplomatic rhetoric on specific issues. BRICS explicitly rejects sanctions that haven't been approved by the UN Security Council.
Which challenges a major tool of Western foreign policy.
Directly. They also oppose double standards in international law. Again, it's a fundamental challenge to how some global powers operate.
So while they're challenging those unilateral tools like sanctions, does the declaration offer any new frameworks for international accountability? Or is it mainly about rejecting existing tools?
It's more focused on rejecting the misuse, as they see it, of existing tools and principles like UN authority and international law. Accountability comes through adhering to those frameworks universally, without double standards.
Got it. And on a related note of accountability, the summit also addressed terrorism pretty forcefully.
Yes, very strongly. They specifically condemned the terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir back on April 22nd, 2025. Tragically, 26 people were killed.
And also attacks in Russia?
Yes, attacks on bridges and railways in Russia around May 31st, June 1st, and 5th, 2025, which harmed civilians, including children.
What was their core message on terrorism?
They emphasized a universal principle that terrorism should never be linked to any specific religion, nationality, civilization, or ethnic group, and crucially, that all those involved in such acts must be held accountable, no exceptions.
A clear line there. Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still on global issues, climate change. How does BRICS position itself?
Right, and here's where BRICS really, you could say, stands apart. They're not climate deniers. Not at all. No. Instead, they frame themselves very clearly as climate justice advocates.
Climate justice. What does that mean in their context?
It means they've adopted this Leaders Framework Declaration on Climate Finance, but it comes with a crystal clear, non-negotiable message. Developed countries must provide the resources, financial and technological, developing countries under the commitments already made in the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement.
Emphasizing historical responsibility.
Exactly. Who caused the bulk of the problem historically, and therefore who should primarily foot the bill for fixing it?
And they push back against certain climate policies from the West.
They do. They explicitly reject what they call environmental protectionism, specifically targeting things like unilateral carbon border adjustment mechanisms, basically. Carbon taxes on imports.
They see those as unfair.
They call them protectionist measures disguised as environmental concerns. They argue it penalizes developing economies unfairly.
But are they offering solutions themselves or just criticizing?
No, they're definitely proposing solutions. And crucially, taking proactive steps themselves. They announced the launch of the Tropical Forest Forever facility at the upcoming COP30.
What's that?
It's designed to mobilize long-term financing, specifically for conserving tropical forests, which are vital carbon sinks, and many are located in BRICS or partner countries.
So they're not waiting around for Western approval or funding on that.
Precisely. They're taking action to solve problems themselves, using their own mechanisms. The overall message on climate comes through loud and clear. Developed countries largely caused the crisis, so they should be the ones paying the lion's share for the solutions. It's about fairness.
It really seems clear they're focused not just on challenging the old order, but actively building their own alternatives, their own solutions. And it seems to go beyond just high-level geopolitics and finance. The sources mention BRICS investing in people. What does that actually look like on the ground?
Yeah, that's an important dimension. It means they're talking about and committing to actively working to fight health gaps, often caused by poverty.
Okay, health equity. What else?
Expanding skills development. There's specific mention of the BRICS Technical and Vocational Education and Training Cooperation Alliance, TVET. So practical job skills for their populations.
And culture.
Fostering cultural exchanges to deepen understanding between these diverse nations. Even looking at practical financial aspects like boosting insurance capacity across the bloc, an effort being led by their finance ministers.
Insurance capacity. That sounds quite specific.
It is. It suggests a focus on building financial resilience at multiple levels. And thinking about the future workforce, they're also proactively focusing on inclusive policies as AI changes the game.
AI is a big one everywhere.
Absolutely. The goal seems to be ensuring that this huge technological shift benefits all their citizens, keeping human well-being central to their economic growth strategy, not just letting tech run away with things.
So it's a holistic approach, investing in human potential, as one source put it.
That seems to be the vision, yes. A vision where nations work together, economies grow strong, but people aren't left behind.
That sounds like an incredibly ambitious vision, especially for what's sometimes called a civilizational alliance. It's not just an economic club.
No, the rhetoric definitely frames it as something deeper.
But with such rapid expansion, I mean, Indonesia is now a full member, right?
That's correct. A major addition.
And then there's this whole list of official partner countries: Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Nigeria, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Uganda, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. That's a lot of diversity.
A huge amount of diversity, geographically, politically, economically.
So the sources must acknowledge the challenges of actually reaching consensus with such a large, varied group. That can be easy.
You're absolutely right to ask that. And yes, the declaration itself, or at least the analysis around it, acknowledges the inherent complexities. Coordinating such a diverse and rapidly expanding group is tough.
Internal negotiations must be tricky.
Undoubtedly. Reaching consensus definitely gets harder as the group grows. There will be internal hurdles, disagreements. That's inevitable.
But despite those hurdles,
the overall trajectory outlined in the Rio Declaration seems undeniably clear. The stated ambition, the direction of travel, is towards a shift in power.
From west to east, north to south.
That's the narrative, yes. President Putin articulated it as aiming for a new model of global growth, one that values human potential over disposable products. A different philosophy.
And how is this playing externally? Are other powers reacting?
Well, yes, there's friction. The sources mentioned, for example, reports of former President Trump threatening an additional 10% tariff on countries that align themselves too closely with BRICS' policies.
So pushback is already happening.
It highlights the growing tension around this whole power shift. It's not happening in a vacuum.
No, definitely not. But what really becomes clear from digging into this summit, into this declaration, is the emergence of a genuine alternative being proposed.
A different way of organizing things.
Exactly. A vision for a world where economic systems are, or at least aim to be, more inclusive, where global decision-making tries to be more representative.
So perhaps the fundamental question, moving forward, isn't whether BRICS can change the world.
What is it then?
It's whether the old established powers can adapt to the changes BRICS is trying to bring about.
That's a powerful thought to end on, and the momentum continues, right? Tomorrow actually marks the start of India's presidency of the BRICS.
Indeed. The story keeps unfolding.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive today, and thank you for listening and exploring this really pivotal moment with us.